Okay, I'm just gonna let everybody trickle in. Hi, everybody, and welcome. We are thrilled to have you join us. My name is Ziara Burkett. I'm the Partner Relationship Manager with GReminders. For those of you who don't know about us, we are the only automated scheduling and reminders platform that directly integrates with the biggest CRMs in the financial services sphere. So Redtail, Wealthbox, Salesforce, HubSpot, the list it's long. And of course, we are the only scheduling platform actually built for advisors, for financial advisors, financial planners. Today, we are delighted to introduce our guest speaker, Stephanie Dannebaum of Stephanie Dannebaum Consulting. She specializes in CRM consulting for financial advisors and financial planners. So thank you so much for joining us, Stephanie.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for having me.
So in this session, we are going to dive deep into the automation process in Redtail. Stephanie's going to take us through the onboarding process. We're going to talk about how GReminders can help with automating that, as well as working through some activity templates and workflows that Stephanie's built out for, kind of a typical onboarding or parts of the onboarding process. Please feel free during the webinar to plug any questions into the Q&A or the chat. I've got both open. We have set out some time at the end just to kind of get all of those addressed and any walkthroughs that are necessary. So without further ado, Stephanie, please take it away from here. Maybe you can tell everybody a little bit more about your company and what you do.
Definitely. Well, again, thanks again for having me on here. It's a great opportunity to show the robust features of GReminders and how it works with a CRM system. Yes, my name is Stephanie Dannebaum. I am the founder and CRM consultant at Stephanie Dannebaum Consulting, a consulting firm for financial advisors and financial planners. In my role as a strategic partner, my goal is to facilitate and guide financial advisors and planners to really elevate their CRM software with proven solutions for client success and sustainable business growth. Before pivoting to a consultant role, I spent the last decade or so gaining experience in operations, investment management, and financial planning. I really have firsthand experience with various software systems, predominantly CRM systems such as Redtail CRM, which is now owned by Orion, as well as Wealthbox CRM. So really, it's my mission to develop CRM systems based on roles and business goals, really to ensure the highest level of adoption and success. Education has always been very important to me. So I earned my Bachelor of Science degree from California Polytechnic State University down in San Luis Obispo. I'm based in California. And then I got my Master of Business Administration and Master of Public Policy over at Mills College. I also hold the Chartered Financial Consultant designation from the American College. But on a more personal note, I really enjoy spending time traveling, skiing, really just being outdoors with my family. My husband, Richard, my two daughters, two young ones. I have a 3-year-old and a 7-month-old, and then 2 dogs, Sterling, who's a black lab, and a boxer named Webster. So going back to the business, what does a CRM consultant really do? So in my role within my firm, I really support financial advisors in 2 ways. One way is more project-based, and then the second is really providing CRM strategy. So when it comes to project-based engagements, I'm really your outsourced team member. I help build out templates, refine opportunity trackers, update contact management lists, integrate with other software systems such as GReminders. Really, the list goes on. So really that engagement really looks like having a project scope call where we determine your needs. After the call, we agree to the scope and the terms. I would say most of the engagements that I have on a project basis range anywhere from 6 weeks to a handful of months. It really just depends on what the scope looks like. Whereas with the CRM strategy, I offer a monthly subscription where really I am your go-to guide when it comes to the CRM. So we have a minimum of at least 1 strategy meeting per month. We have at least 1 training session per month. You have unlimited phone and email access to me, and then you gain access to my library of best practice resources. So you'll see today a couple of my different templates, but I have quite a few dozen workflow, note, task templates. style guide, email templates, anything that you really need to set a baseline if you are trying to figure out, okay, I need an onboarding process, or I need a surge meeting process. Like, where do I start? That's something where I can at least provide you that baseline, and then you are able to go from there, and then we customize it. So before we jump into the demo, again, we're going to be looking at Redtail today, but I do help out with Wealthbox. I really want to go through, the main reasons why you want to spend the time to optimize your CRM software in order to enhance your integrations, such as with GReminders. So without CRM optimization, really a CRM software is a glorified digital Rolodex. The power behind the CRM software really comes to life when you document every client touch with your brand. So even if someone is calling in on the balance of their investment account, you always want to go into the CRM, add the note for history, tag it as an incoming phone call, for instance. That way everything is documented in the CRM and the entire team can see it. You can also generate deep business insights on clients and prospects, as well as centers of influence, by creating reports on important metrics. So instead of having everything outside in, let's say, Excel spreadsheets, having everything within the CRM makes you be able to run reports and give you that information that much quicker. So for instance, like, looking at trying to figure out where's the bulk of your business coming from, or what are your operational bottlenecks. So really, by optimizing your CRM, you can really track your day-to-day operations. Some other examples that I've seen with some clients, if you're holding a seminar, for instance, and you have 100 people come to the seminar, but only 5 are converted to clients, you can really quantify that into real dollars. And then if you add a prospect and it takes about 100 days to turn them into a client, you can assess your sales process. Really, without a CRM that's optimized, you're making decisions blindly. And a CRM really gives you that holistic view of your clients and your business as a whole. Really, another reason is to really increase your time efficiency and productivity by automating those routine processes. So building out templates, as we're going to talk about today, you really can allow for the software to do a lot of the heavy lifting. And again, we're going to be talking about that with the GReminders automations today. And really, lastly, the final reason is really to improve that quality of service that you're providing to your clients. So for instance, let's talk about phone calls. If someone takes a phone call on your behalf, are you aware of that conversation? Everyone can add their 2 cents and improve the quality of service being provided by putting every single correspondence with a client or prospect into the CRM. That way, in preparation for that review, for example, you can recall, who they talked to and, what they talked about. All right, so I know that was a quick go through of everything. So I'm going to switch it over now to the case study. And so again, if people have questions as they come in on the Q&A, more than happy to answer them. So I'm going to share my screen. All right, so do you see the Redtail database?
Yep. Perfect.
Well, before I jump in, Z, I don't know, do you have anything to add as far as, having, like, from your point of view with GReminders, how to make sure that the CRM is up to date? I know with your background of working in CRMs previously, do you have anything else to add to what I was talking about earlier?
Sure. So from features and, abilities, whenever, and I know we'll kind of dive into where GReminders kind of fits into all of this, but, I think we know the age-old adage of, if it's not in Redtail, it didn't happen. I think that's pretty universal to any CRM, but such a catchphrase when we're talking about Redtail. And, from a GReminders standpoint, and when I think about, as you said, my own experience and building these databases and the things I maybe wish I would have seen, especially from a client services standpoint, I was on the marketing side at an advisory and then moved on to building the databases. Advisors are notorious. I'm chasing after you for remarks. When was the last time you talked to, the client? What did you say to them? So having that listed in the contact and having those things written back to the contact. Where does GReminders fit in now as a tool to that? When we are sending out reminders for meetings that you're booking in your onboarding process, that initial booking when somebody sets a meeting to do an introductory meeting or a discovery meeting, those are automatically getting written back for you. So, me as, a marketing person, or maybe your assistant, I'm not, hunting you down to see when did they schedule with you, what was sent out, what kind of information did they receive against this meeting. There's a log, there's a history of that. So, absolutely jump right in here, and I'd love to touch on that a little bit more, but yeah, I mean, writing things back to the contact and having that historical timeline is absolutely imperative. It doesn't matter if we are just working through an activity or running through a workflow, we're touching that client, email, phone, whatever. So having that notated is a huge thing for me. And that was the main point that I feel like I drew out of that.
Definitely. No, I really appreciate your feedback and your input. Yeah, I just wanted to, if there's anything else to bring to the conversation. So let's just jump into the demo as far as talking through it with the GReminders integration. So for instance, we're going to use this case study here where Ted Wheeler is a prospect that is now going to be onboarded. And so what's really nice about, the GReminders integration is that once you have an event created, it can automatically trigger a lot of these different templates within Redtail. So let's say, for instance, someone schedules that they are going to do an onboarding meeting. There's some firms I work with that they have that just to go through and have that one-on-one meeting with the client to go through all the account paperwork, for instance. So if we had that as an event type in GReminders, and let's say I am the CSA and I'm sending that out to Ted Wheeler, then they can go in and schedule it. And the minute they schedule it, we can have all of these different items automatically trigger. So this really saves your staff a lot of time of having to schedule the meeting and then having to go into Redtail and then having to go and spend that time. I don't know, Z, if you have any data as far as how much time is really saved, but I would imagine it's hours over a course of months. There's got to be a lot of time that is saved, because if you're not having to go into Ted Wheeler's contact, for instance, and then spin off the workflow, spin off any activity templates, which we'll talk about in a minute, it really saves a lot of time. And there's no question as far as, oh, is it this onboarding one, or is it this? When you get to a point where you have a lot of templates in your system, there may be some confusion as far as which workflows and activity templates with certain clientele. Maybe you have a AAA client and they get a certain kind of onboarding workflow because they also have estate planning. There's some other thing that you need to make sure gets done. You can be as specific as possible with that event type. And there's no question as far as what workflows and activity templates within Redtail have to be triggered. It will automatically be done. So again, transparency, having that automation set up, it really just helps, again, streamline things and really have you focus on what's more important, which is preparing for those meetings, having that client service activity completed, instead of having to, as Z was mentioning, going back and forth. So for instance, let's say that Ted Wheeler has scheduled his onboarding meeting, and we've spun off this onboarding workflow. So what is a workflow? For those of you who are maybe newer to Redtail or are using a different CRM system, Redtail, again, as Z was mentioning, is really focused on financial advisors. And so today we're just going through how exactly a workflow works. So how a workflow is in Redtail is you have the yellow bar here is what's called a step. And then under that are tasks. So the tasks are the action items that you have to do for a certain step. So for instance, I have here updating the CRM and a welcome letter once you onboard this new client. And then those are the two tasks to update the CRM. So updating the status of the client from prospect to an active client, for instance, and then sending a welcome letter. So you have to make sure you complete the tasks before you can move on to the next step. That is one caveat about the steps. What's really nice is that, again, by having all of this pre-made and pre-built, you can set up all of the due dates. So for instance, here, we're going to say, I set this up previously for the demo, but let's just say within, the next 2 weeks, we really want to make sure that the CRM is updated and the welcome letter is sent out by the operations team. So you have the task name assigned to, so you could assign it technically to the creating user. You can, assign it to an actual user, but my best practice is to really assign it to a team. So a team essentially is a collective group of users based off of however you set the parameters. So I always recommend, as you can see here, if there's 2 or 3 people on your operations team, having them on there. And then if there's advisors that all need to be grouped together for certain tasks, do that as well. And then on here, by quickly, going to this overall workflow, you can see due dates, you can see what the status is, and then you can complete the tasks within the workflow right here. So again, you would just, click on complete here, and then it would just go through and it'll show you the status. Now, I'm not going to show it today, but you can run reports and you can see, how many workflows were done to give you those different metrics. You can see the status of different ones in different dashboards. So again, if you want to learn more about that, feel free to reach out to me. But for today's demo, we're just going to go through those different templates. But again, this is just from a very high level. This would be an onboarding, template. So again, as I was mentioning at the beginning of the call, I have dozens of these different templates that we essentially can customize to exactly how you work. Everyone has their secret sauce. Everyone has their special way of working with their clients. And I really like to translate that into the actual workflows, activity templates, note templates, and such, because having that translate will also translate into that client service. So we really don't want to have any sort of cookie cutter type of templates in your CRM system, because everyone wants that special experience. That's why they're working with you. And so we want to make sure that no matter who it is on the team, they understand what that service looks like. So making sure that when you're going into these tasks, everything is documented. So again, I always bold everything that is part of the tasks. So for instance, here, these are all of the different areas of the CRM that you have to update when you go from being a prospect to a client. So again, I always recommend making it bold, just so that way it distinguishes what is part of the template versus what you are adding as a user. Another little best practice tip, always put in your initials, because the one thing about the tasks as well as activities, it doesn't document who exactly was the user that made a certain comment or addition to the description. So always make sure that you're adding in at least your initials. If it's an ongoing part of the documentation, such as in here, always add in the date as well. So I always recommend date, initials, and then the information that you're adding. So that way, again, let's just say in a year's time, we're having an annual review. The advisor can quickly go in and see for that activity, who worked on it, at what time. And again, bringing that transparency, and then you don't have to be doing those emails back and forth or go over to someone's desk if you're actually in an office now these days, being able to actually talk with them and figure out what's going on. You can quickly just be able to go into your CRM and go and find that information. Again, going back to what I talked about earlier, making sure you're optimizing your CRM. So that way you have everything here. You're not having all these spreadsheets in different areas. You're having to go to your Box or Dropbox and, you have to sift through all these different client files. If everything is here, majority of the information is searchable. It's super easy for you to be able to go in and utilize it. So again, if we are in the case study here where we have Ted Wheeler, he's being onboarded. The big thing is this onboarding workflow where, we're adding him into the different softwares, such as financial planning softwares, portfolio management, billing. We're setting up that document storage. We're starting to do that new account paperwork. And then, now, because of this really cool new addition to GReminders, not only can you trigger these workflows, but you can actually trigger these activity templates, which is huge. So I love activity templates because they're great for those quick action items that only involve maybe 1 to 2 people, something where you need to just get it done. So let's just say, for instance, we have this onboarding meeting prep activity template. Again, that's something where within GReminders now, you can say when someone's onboarded for this event type, I want to have the onboarding workflow triggered. I want to have this activity triggered. Again, saving so much time. So that way you're not having to go into the system and have to, essentially go in, find the person, add the activity, set it all up. It's all set up here. So again, this is just an example of one. And then again, let's say we want to add another activity. You can add as much as you want into GReminders for the event type, which is awesome. So let's say, for instance, when we're onboarding, another thing that you do simultaneously is you're going through their estate plan and their insurance policies. So I've had a client that will do that. They said, you know what, I know we've got to onboard all of these investment accounts, but as we're doing that, I want to make sure that we're taking care of the insurance policy reviews and start that financial planning process. They had a separate, for this case study, for this other client of mine, they had a whole separate workflow for more detailed items, but this is something that they wanted to do first, right off with an activity template. So again, this is something where for an analysis, and then they were going to just have a workflow for the actual review. So here's like another example of one that could be just spun off. So an estate planning and insurance review. So again, what's really nice about this is the subject is already pre-populated. The type is already pre-populated. Type typically very high level. It's just something where I always recommend Redtail has its already pre-populated ones. So you have task, appointment, phone call, and such. So I always recommend just to keep it as high level as possible. But then this category is so crucial. You can report on it. You can be able to categorize, filter. There's so much you can do with the category within an activity. And you can customize it however you want. And then what's really cool is all the type and the category you can actually do in GReminders as well, which I'm sure Z will go into. But what's really great is that this could all be pre-populated if you use a template. So I always recommend, if you're going to do something more than once, you got to make it a template, whether it's a workflow template, a note template, activity template. You got to make sure that you have it all ready to go. Because again, all of this stuff that I made bold will stay bold whenever you create it for no matter who it is in your system. And so it's a really great way for you to not have to recreate the wheel every single time. And so all this stuff can already be pre-populated. And then again, once it's in the system, so, you have the event, event type is scheduled again for that onboarding, this pops up, then, anyone on your staff can just jump on in here and start taking action on it. And you can start, linking your notes to it. You can start linking your accounts to it. You can start linking documents if you need to. So, again, it really alleviates your staff's time of having to do the more administrative side of things, in my opinion, of having to go into the system, trigger all of these different items, and then to be able to actually take action on them. And then let me see if there's anything else I wanted to talk about that. I think that's pretty much it as far as the going through the templates. I will spend a couple of minutes going through again what I think would be better suited for an activity template versus a workflow template. But Z, I didn't know if you wanted to jump in and add anything else, or if I should jump into those activities and workflows and then have you talk about your reminders after.
Yeah, let's do that. I'll save mine to the end because I think you're going to kind of tackle some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. So go ahead and do that. And then I'll kind of jump right in and show them where that lives in GReminders.
Okay, perfect. And yeah, so I talk about in a blog post on my website, which I'll add the link in the chat at the very end of our conversation today during the Q&A. But really the distinction between an activity and a workflow. So again, activities are really meant for individual, short-term, and or project-based activities. So really you should be using them for two main reasons. One, to occupy a time on your calendar. So, whether that is to do an activity, specific to a client or a COI. And then another reason is really to handle one-off projects, such as an address update, ACH transfer. It's really meant, again, for like 1 to 2 people, short timeline, something that, as you can see here, something that will take, hopefully not too long. But again, it's something short in nature. Whereas a workflow is meant to be collaborative with the team, more longer term, and really process-based. So you should be using workflow templates for any step-by-step procedure that you're repeating over and over again. So for instance, we're talking about onboarding like we just viewed moments ago. We're looking at a client review, hosting an event. So really just making sure that those really at the end of the day, a workflow is a bunch of repeatable activities put together that are automatically being triggered to go to the next person to be able to get completed. And again, it's more longer term. So, I know like when I was working for firms before, there was always that one account that was always lingering during the onboarding process. So again, making sure that you have the workflow for an onboarding will make sure that nothing slips through the cracks, because most onboarding, it's not like it happens overnight. We'd love it to. But usually by the time you do all the account paperwork and everything, it's at least, a couple week process, hopefully shorter, but it's not like an overnight kind of thing like you would use an activity template for. So really building out those workflow templates, making sure you have all the steps identified. I always recommend a team to Redtail calls it whiteboarding. So I always recommend to whiteboard your process, which essentially, again, it's really whiteboarding. So you take a whiteboard or, have Post-it notes, whatever you need as a team to really put together what are the steps that I take when I onboard, for instance, or what are the steps that we take when we do a client review. Making sure that you really identify all of those steps and who's in charge of them. By having all of that done ahead of time will make the building of those templates, such as a workflow template, that much easier. Because then, like you saw on there, like you can figure out and identify, okay, what are the steps? So steps technically aren't actionable, it's the tasks within each step, but you can at least group those tasks based off of timelines or who's working on them or the type of activity that you're doing. And then that step can help you be able to put those together. And again, really by utilizing a workflow over an activity, you're taking advantage of that more automation type of feature within the CRM. And really this just makes sure that no steps get missed. So, if client A were to talk to client B, for instance, they really have the same exact experience. And so, yeah, so with that, that's everything that I wanted to go over today. But again, Z wanted to, go back and forth and chat about, the integration, and then now again with the activity templates, that's like a huge game changer. So would love to just talk more about
that. So thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, I think really I think it would be crucial, to bounce off here with what Stephanie has said to kind of show you where all of these features live with the integration. So in our database here, let's see, I can show you on the platform side. Okay, so when you're in GReminders, I think it's important to note off the bat, and I think Stephanie has stressed this enough, that you're not meant to live in the GReminders platform. We really would like you to live out of your CRM, out of your calendar, other platforms. We are specifically made to be a back-end tool. We want to be helpful, but we don't want to be something that it's just one more piece of tech you have to live out of. That's not ideal. However, when you are initially building out your platform, and when we talk about, triggering these activity templates and triggering the workflows, and what does the integration look like from the GReminder side mimicked into Redtail, I'm going to show you that here. So what I've got open right now is a typical event type build out. This is just for an introductory meeting. This is just an example of that. I think that's a pretty universal meeting for most financial advisors. So I'm going to do it really fast, specifically because I'd like to show you what these things look like once they're triggered in the CRM, but I do want to show you where they live in the platform for, when you are building them out, and just kind of how easy it is going from Redtail automations and setting those up, which admittedly, I think we can all agree, sometimes they can be a little bit tricky. From having to go to that to just a simple drop down field to trigger those workflows and activity templates. So in our introductory meeting, event type, this is all public facing information, our introductory meeting name, the short link, which this can be customized to anything you wanted to. You can type anything there in that field. And then whatever our public description is. So we have a couple different location options. You can do your web meeting conferences. We can do our phone. Oh my gosh, excuse me. We can do a phone appointment. Okay, so if anybody else is living with children, you completely understand that they're just petri dishes and you get to constantly be sick. So, okay. So we will have the calendar that we're going to set this meeting against. Typically your work calendar will be listed as your primary calendar. The event bookings criteria is going to look pretty similar to other automated scheduling systems with a few extra nuances. So, being able to require approval, do you want to receive a pretty email with a big green or a big red button that says you'll take this meeting or you won't? How soon can those events be scheduled once the person has received the link? So I just have mine automatically set to 2 hours away because I don't like to scramble. How long is the meeting? What is the buffer between? The dynamic time zone option. This is great because it shows my West Coast customers and clients my East Coast availability. So without, having to kind of do the math themselves. So I love this being the default, but you can set that to be fixed to your time zone. Stephanie kind of talked a little bit about meeting type and meeting category. So these two things do talk to activity type and activity category. So if you are using those things for pulling reports, seeing how many of a specific meeting type you're taking, and you're living out of the Redtail calendar in that way, this is a great feature to use. Otherwise, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be something that talks to your CRM or maybe something that you're pulling reports in your CRM for. It's also an additure to the reporting capability in GReminders. So it can be used for that as well. This is where you'll get kind of granular with your availability. Actually, just recently, Stephanie and I kind of had a brief conversation about being able to block out specific days. And I was kind of coming up with, at the time that we had this conversation, I was trying to come up with some nuances and different kind of workarounds. She has pretty specific availability and days she can and can't make it to the office, or maybe she's just not available. And then wouldn't you know it, I had kind of completely forgot that on our roadmap, and what was announced the very next day was the ability to block out specific days. So if you know in advance, I'm never going to be available on this day, you can go ahead and block those out, which has been pivotal, obviously to some, but definitely to me as well. And then you can set, whatever availability you'd like to set for this specific meeting here. You can do date ranges, specific start times. So I know some advisors do 9 a.m., 11, 1, and 3, and those are the only times that they take meetings. So it's really whatever your preference is. You can also just keep it to the typical 9 to 5. So these are our form questions. This is where we really start to see the beginning of that integration and the the integration between GReminders and Redtail and how we talk to Redtail. So with form questions, you can create kind of one-off questions or things like this. What is our veteran status? Are they a Medicare recipient? It goes further than just collecting contact information and writing that to the contact. Of course, we can create new contacts in your CRM. So if we find that we don't have an email when they schedule with you that matches, we'll create that contact in your CRM, add all of the contact information, address, things like that. We can also update contact information. So if they put in a new phone number, put in a new address, we can make sure that that gets updated in your CRM if you'd like it to. You truly do decide how you want us to work with your CRM. Okay, from these form questions, we'll speak directly Redtail's UDFs. So if you have a UDF in Redtail that says, what is your veteran status? Are you a Medicare recipient? We can write their answer back to the UDFs. So that way, inevitably, you can report on it. Do we want to see how many of our active clients are veterans or a non-retired veteran? Do we want to see how many are Medicare recipients? You can pull that list. You can do all the same things in post-scheduled questions. You'll just add the question here of whatever it is you're trying to collect post-scheduling, meaning they're already on your calendar and it just kind of populates a list of questions for you. This is what your calendar invite is going to look like. So you can put any of that information into here with variables. This is a great thing to do and go through on a more personalized demo so we can kind of see exactly what kind of information you'd like to collect and then also put out there. This is where you'll set up payment information, decide if you want our GReminders thank you page or if you would like a custom redirect somewhere else. And then finally, down at the very bottom, once we've built out our entire event type, we have the workflows section. So when you hit your drop down button, you'll see we have a myriad of Redtail activity templates. This list will auto-populate for you based on however many templates or whatever amount of templates you have in your CRM already. Same thing with the workflow templates. You'll be able to set as many as you'd like against this. So for my introductory appointment, I've got my first appointment follow-up process from my template, my introductory meeting from my workflow templates, and then, maybe I've got this introductory meeting activity template that can also trigger off at the same time. So that's setting it up on our end. What I'd like to show you is what a typical contact looks like that is fully integrated with GReminders. So I use Roger Thornhill. This is what our reminders are sent out when anybody has maybe an upcoming meeting and I've got a reminder set for that or an initial booking. It will write back everything that was sent to Roger, who it was sent by, the number, was it SMS? This will say email, things like that. Whatever I have this mapped out as, written out as, will be written back to the notes. And this is kind of what Stephanie and I were talking about earlier in terms of having that historical timeline. Every time somebody schedules with Roger, I have that in the notes section. Whenever we talk about things that I was collecting for my UDS on some of those form questions for different meetings that he's being scheduled with, all of this has been grabbed from GReminders and put into the CRM. So this is what I mean whenever we can report against those UDS. And then any open workflow tasks I have, any meetings that have been scheduled with him, the task, who it's assigned to, because similarly, best practice for us as well, and I'm happy to support Stephanie on this, is always using team whenever we're assigning tasks. You are constantly going to be changing, even role, but, user all the time. We have a turnover in this business in general, in anything. And so having to go in and change that user from every single workflow template can be extremely cumbersome rather than just removing them or adding them to a team. So that's where you'll see all of those. So really with that, I know it's just a pretty granular look at GReminders, but I am happy to do any personalized demos for anybody on this webinar to get a little bit more of a granular look at the platform. But really with that, that's GReminders, and that's what the integration really looks like in the CRM from start to finish, from setting an appointment, to hosting the appointment. Okay, so now with that, Stephanie, while we were going through this, I did have a couple of questions if you have time. Okay, I have this question. So what is the best way that I could add efficiency to my Redtail CRM like today?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that you can do is really build out those different templates that we were talking about. So anything that's repeatable. So if you're going in and you're adding in an activity to do an ACH transfer every single time, so you're typing out the name, you're typing out description, and then you're clicking the type, you're clicking the category. If you're manually doing that every single time, the first thing you can do to add efficiency to your Redtail is to make that a template. If you do it more than once, make it a template. And what's really great is, as Z was talking about earlier, with all those notes, you can create note templates. So if there's someone who calls in, you can have, for like your administrator or your CSA, you can have in the description, like bold it, but just have those different things that you always want someone, whoever picks up the phone, to have documented. So, who you talk to, the topic of the conversation, next steps or action items. Something simple like that, where you could just be able to look at it quickly and figure out what happened on that call, but at least it's documented. And again, if you pre-populate all that information into the template and save it as a template in your system, then there's no question as far as what needs to be done for that given activity.
I love that. Yeah. Okay, so okay. How quickly can I see, or what's a good way that we can see when a client needs reviews, when it's time for their reviews in Redtail?
Definitely. So, as we're talking about GReminders and we're looking at event types, we're going to be making sure that all those different client reviews, for instance, are scheduled. So if you're a firm that likes to do search meetings, or if you're a firm that just does these one-off client reviews on an annual, quarterly, or more frequently, basis, being able to have an understanding of like, okay, sure, I have the ability to reach out to all these people and schedule it, but how do I know when they need that meeting? So really there's two spots within Redtail that I always recommend using. So the first is the Know Your Client section. So when you look at a contact record under the Know Your Client section, that is where you can find a lot of the different documentation that is being saved. So IMAs, ADVs, all of that. But then you also can track the client reviews. So in there, you can say when the client review is, how often you're going to be meeting with them. And then what's nice is that you get reminders of when that review needs to happen. So again, once you have that all in the system, then you can quickly report on it, have a report and say, okay, who do I need to have a review with? And then the second way, if the Know Your Client is not a way that you would like to use it, you can also use what's called keywords. So keywords are a way for you to add in information. So as Z was showing you earlier with those custom fields. So those are usually user-defined fields, but keywords are a great way for you to document different information about the person. It's more longer term in nature that you want to have stored on the contact record. Let's say, for instance, if they go to a certain event that you host, documenting that. But one other option is to use it as like a client review. So you can say that if they are, they come in every January, you can add January to them as a keyword, for instance. And then you can run what's called a quick list, which is a group of those people. And then you can be able to see who they are. And then you can add that event type to be sent out to them to be able to have that. And again, as we were talking about earlier at the beginning of the presentation, how I have all these really great resources. One thing that I recommend is that if you are using GReminders, to really make sure that you're utilizing the email templates within GReminders. You have the ability to do that within Redtail, but what's really great about having it within GReminders is that it will automatically go out, and then it has your reminders already pre-built. So having that in there, you can actually have the link ready to go for, like, let's say the next annual review. So again, really capitalizing and making the software do a lot of the heavy lifting is what I always recommend. But those are the two areas. Know Your Client and keywords are probably the top two areas in order to track when clients need their review.
Great. Okay. Wrapping up here. So what can I do to enhance the automation in GReminders and Redtail?
Yep. So again, to really enhance that automation is to really make sure you're using that type. So as I was showing, and then as Z was showing at the very end there of those event types, making sure that you have those, those event types already pre-populated and those activities, the categories rather, having those already pre-populated. And then again, I've said it multiple times during the call, but making sure you build out those templates. So that way it's just easier for you to be able to go in. So because if the template's not made, you can't see what you would like to have in GReminders. It has to be a template to be able to trigger that within Redtail. So you got to make sure you put in that time, and it's well worth the effort. If you're going to build out your CRM, build out your GReminders. Once you do that, build it with your team, then you can really be able to be a lot more efficient with your client servicing activities. But yeah, just make sure you build it all out. And again, bring in your team. I always, as we were talking about earlier with assigning things to teams, I always recommend when you're whiteboarding or anything, involve your team. The CEO should be in the same room with the CSA. Like, you should really be working together, because everyone has their little, different tasks within a process, and you got to make sure that everything gets checked off. And again, I always build CRMs in that viewpoint of the role. So really, as the owner of the firm, you may only want to be looking at reports and figure out, okay, what are my key metrics? What are my KPIs? Whereas the CSAs are the ones who are like boots on the ground, actually doing the tasks. So again, I always like to have everyone together in the room and be able to talk about the different processes, but have in mind, okay, well, we're really building this so that way the people who are actually in the system all day long can be super efficient. But then the people who are running the business, who may be going out and meeting with clients, can rely on their team to be able to get that stuff done. But at the same time, can be looking at those reports Each feature is really, we have the reporting feature, the templates, everything. In my opinion, with the CRM, each feature has its own reason for your role. So again, if you're the owner and you're not really looking to be in the system, you don't feel bad if you're the owner and you're not doing the day-to-day. You don't have to be in the CRM all day long. Like, it's not meant for that. What the CRM is meant to do is to empower you with whatever position you have within the firm. So again, spend the time, build out those templates, so that way you're not having to recreate the wheel. Build out a standard operating procedure outside to document those really nitty-gritty type of steps that you need, that are more all-encompassing, maybe outside of the CRM. But again, making sure that all of that is cohesive, there's no question, and having that camaraderie between your team of understanding who needs to do what is the most important.
Yeah, and to bounce off that, Stephanie, is like such a great point. It's also, when we're building out those templates, it's so important that, like, as you said, the standard operating procedure, everybody needs to be doing the same thing in your CRM. It should be like cogs, throughout. So that way people are not dropping the ball anywhere. Tasks are not getting missed. And if that's templated out and you at least have some kind of shell of what your workflows should be for an annual review, for moving money, for changing addresses, I know it seems like maybe some oftentimes silly things where it's like, oh, I have to change it in the custodian and on the paperwork. I know where I have to change that. Okay. And what if you hit the lottery and you decide, I don't need this job? The next person coming in, it makes onboarding a whole lot easier if every single process, which can be everything in the financial services industry can be processed. It can be templated. So whenever we talk about, well, if Cindy's not here tomorrow, what does that look like for us? Well, right, somebody can very quickly step in and say, this is exactly, how we do things here and the easiest way that, we process these things. So yeah, I am a huge fan of templates, and I really don't even work out of Redtail as much as I used to. And I'm still templating my processes. I think, you can really never go wrong with a whiteboarding document, and I'm always in there. So yeah, I completely 100% agree with Stephanie, specifically for the financial services industry, and just how imperative it is to template everything. It's so worth it. You do it once, you spend the time, and then boom, every process after that is like, oh, I just have my little checklist, and you're ready to go. Okay, sorry, last thing here, Stephanie, how can they contact you on information with GReminders, how to sign up for that, how to get onboarded with you, and maybe inquire about some consulting services? How can they reach out to you?
Yep. Best way is to reach out to me on my website, which is just my first and last name.com. Feel free to schedule a discovery call where we just talk through what your needs are, what your pain points are with your CRM, and then see how we can help you be able to elevate it to a point that you feel, really good about it. On there you'll see my phone number, my email, and then we have a newsletter that goes out on a monthly basis where I provide any sort of new updates of what I'm doing. So such as this, this webinar, if I'm on any podcasts, and then if there is industry specific items for Redtail or Wealthbox, I do add that to the newsletter as well. So I know they each have their own newsletters, but I essentially combine them. So that way it's a one-stop place that you have to go to get that information. But yeah, those are the main areas to get a hold of me. Again, more than happy to answer any questions. Feel free to reach out, phone, email. I have a lot of information on my website, lots of blogs, which I will put that blog post link here in the chat. So that is now in there if you need it. And so for that, you'll see a little bit more detail as far as my activity and workflow templates. I do blogs as well on timely items. So I try and do that on a monthly basis as well. So the next one actually I'm doing is about how AI and CRMs work together. So I'm really trying to find different topics that really resonate with my clients as well as some prospects. And just making sure that anything that you need to know as far as how to make your CRM that much better, you are educated through my blog posts. So yeah, really just reach out to me. More than happy to answer any questions. And look forward to chatting with anyone on this call.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much. Just to second that, anybody who was here today on the webinar, or if you were not able to make it and you are now watching the webinar replay, this is going to go out tomorrow. So you guys will see a little follow-up in your email. I'll make sure that I include this blog post that Stephanie just referenced. And then of course, multiple ways that you can contact her, as well as anybody on the GReminders team. Stephanie and I work pretty much in tandem together. So we are always happy to answer any questions that you might have. So truly, again, thank you everybody for just carving out some time today to sit with us. I'm of course so appreciative of Stephanie's time in doing this webinar with us. We hope that you leverage the insights that you gained today to elevate your business operations. And then of course, as I said, for any further information, partnership inquiries, to take advantage of any exclusive offers, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And then of course, as Stephanie said, if you're interested in learning more about the capability of GReminders or your Redtail CRM, you can reach out directly to her, and she can get you set up and on the right path. So as we conclude, we look forward to supporting your journey toward greater efficiency and success. So please stay tuned for our upcoming webinars and events. And until we meet again, keep automating, keep simplifying, and happy scheduling. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Thank you so much.